Hi, everyone. This is Sarah Russell, and today I'm super excited to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is finding the super in everyday foods. So, um, we definitely live in an incredibly kind of and sometimes overwhelming commercial kind of culture. I'm not talking just about American culture, I'm talking about the entire Western world. So, one of the things that definitely we can fall prey to is just hype around, the silver bullets that promise to do amazing things for us. So, we've all kind of fallen prey to some kind of a superfood claim. Um, but what I want to do is challenge you um, to find and acknowledge and really enjoy um, how super and amazing the foods that we kind of tend to underestimate because they may just be humble, cheap uh, foods that you can easily get for, get on a budget, or foods that we even consider to be weeds. So I'm going to be talking about the unglamorous um, foods that are totally underestimated. So the first foods that I want to talk about are foods that may be growing wild in your backyard. Hopefully, no, hopefully you're not using Roundup, because if you are, then these wonderful wild foods are probably not growing um, in your backyard. Um, so, backstory: I grew up um, loving the idea and actual practice of picking, of studying and picking and eating edible and medicinal wild herbs and mushrooms. That is something that I got really into when I was 7, when I moved from Venice to Tuscany, into the countryside, where I discovered, gosh, there's just so much stuff that you could eat that just grows wild. And I just, I went wild. I was like, this is awesome. Um, so I just, so hi, Susie. It's so nice to have you here. Um, I'm going to start just talking about stinging nettle, um, which, certainly you can buy dried stinging nettle at the health food store. Certain times of year, you may be able to find it fresh at the farmer's market. You can plant it and grow it in your garden if you want. It's not super easy to find seeds, commercially, but you certainly can find them, if you go places where nettles grow, and they typically go to seed around August in a temperate climate. Hi, Anne. It's so nice to have you here. So I love stinging nettle. It was one of my family's like tried and true remedies that I grew up eating. They literally grew in our backyard. And I remember as a kid, in the summer, just getting constantly stung by stinging nettles because I would be walking around in, my shorts and barefoot because I never wore shoes in the summer. And so they do sting. My dad taught me how to pick stinging nettles without getting stung on my hands without gloves. So that is kind of, a talent that I still have. But stinging nettles are really amazing because you can, they're versatile. You can use them as a green. You can, you can steam them. You can saute them. You can make a pesto. You can add it to omelets. You can chop it up and add it to risotto. You can make nettle tea. You can make nettle popsicles. You can make nettle tea jello. You can do tons of stuff. It's very cool. Hi, Anne. I'm sorry. I have not been advertising my lives very much lately. I do a Facebook Live presentation every Friday at this time, except the last Friday of the month when I do a group call on Zoom, which is just an interactive Q&A. So, Anne, we should definitely talk more about this, and I will get back in the habit of, announcing these things more, because I have kind of fallen off the wagon about doing that. I've been just so busy. I've really just been staying on my routine, but not really being on social media enough to let people know what I'm actually doing. So stinging nettle, really amazing. It is mineralizing. It is an adaptogen. So if you are supporting your adrenals before you go out and, buy a bottle of ashwagandha or eleuthero at the health food store, especially if you're on a budget, try stinging nettle tea first. It is, it's a great low cost and very underestimated tonic and adaptogen. In my family, we use stinging nettle, especially for respiratory afflictions like asthma, bronchitis, things like that. But it's very versatile otherwise. The next wild plant that may be growing like a weed in your garden that I wanted to talk about today is dandelion. So dandelion has always been one of my favorite flowers. I never understood or really appreciated people who said, oh, dandelion is a weed. Like I remember an art teacher from high school when somebody from my class, I don't remember who, maybe it was me, maybe it was my sister, maybe it was both of us, or maybe it was someone else. But anyway, someone gave her a bouquet of dandelion flowers, and she did not really appreciate it. And she said, oh, nobody has ever told you that those are weeds and they shouldn't be given as a gift. You should know that. And I was like, but why? The entire, every part of the dandelion plant is edible and medicinal. The root is an amazing detoxifier for the liver, and you can dry the dandelion root and brew it as a detoxifying tea. Dandelion leaves are an amazing green with really excellent health properties. You can saute them. The younger, smaller leaves can be chopped up and used as baby greens in a mixed green salad. I add in the dandelion blooms as well because they're pretty. I add them, for color and excitement and nutrition in my mixed salads. I add other flowers according to the season that are edible and can be put in a salad. And you could also make dandelion green pesto, as well as using the buds before the flower opens. You can make capers from those, even though, of course, they're not real capers, but you can put them, you can culture them in water and salt and make essentially something that will taste exactly like a caper. So that is pretty awesome. You can also chop up dandelion greens finely and add them as a garnish to soup or risotto. Oh, I wanted to go back to the stinging nettle. So stinging nettles will sting unless they have been dried or cooked. So do not eat nettle raw. Cook it, which could mean, steaming it, sauteing it, whatever you're doing, or get the dried nettle and use that. You definitely do not want to chew on a piece of on a raw nettle leaf. I've never tried, but I don't recommend it. Okay. The next wild plant that I wanted to talk about is purslane. So purslane is, hi Christy, it's nice to have you here. Purslane is a weed, basically, that is, you could consider it a succulent. It has kind of gelatinous leaves. It may grow wild in your garden. I actually discovered purslane for the first time when some friends came to lunch and they were super, super broke. And what did they bring to lunch? As like their contribution, it wasn't necessarily a potluck, but they wanted to bring something and they had no money. They actually found some wild purslane and picked it, and I was like, oh, you can eat that? and then I went and studied it, and I was pretty blown away because purslane is a really amazing plant. So hi Deborah, it's so nice to have you here. Purslane is an amazing plant because it has actually been studied for its properties for healing some gut infections, for example, Candida albicans and some other kind of pesky microbes that can overgrow in the human gut. And some of these can actually be, highly difficult to eradicate. So can you imagine, somebody who has gone through the issue of trying to rebalance their gut flora, has paid hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in testing and various expensive treatments. And you could actually maybe heal and rebalance your gut just with a purslane that's growing as a weed in your backyard. I have a gardening space. I actually like the idea of gardening, and sometimes I plant and grow things, but one of my biggest obstacles in gardening is that I can't really do like proper gardening with raised beds and specifically planned stuff, because I'm literally unable to pull up certain types of weeds like purslane or dandelion. And my son is the same way. He's 8, and ever since he was little, he would go around and actually water the dandelion plants, and he would take little rocks and make a circle around the purslane so Dad wouldn't accidentally step on it, without noticing, or accidentally pull up the purslane thinking it was a weed. So and then mallow and various other things. So I just kind of plant things around the wild things that I actually want growing, and then that's kind of my compromise way of gardening. I love living in a place where lots of great wild things grow. Every single year, I go on herb walks and I learn about new herbs that are growing in my area. There's just so much biodiversity that you can't actually, if you have a full-time job and a busy life, you can't actually try to learn everything all at once. I think that's just part of the excitement of being human, is you can always learn tons and tons of stuff. So there are a couple of people that I want to kind of acknowledge in this part, in this first part, kind of the wild edibles part of this Facebook Live episode. And the first one is Victoria Lafont, because she recently posted an article about the research done on various botanicals, including purslane, for the gut infections. So thank you, Victoria, for pointing that out. And she tagged me because I know she knew that I would appreciate the reference, of course. So that's just exactly the kind of thing that I get really excited about. So the other person that I wanted to acknowledge is Sandor Katz. You may know his work. He wrote the book Wild Fermentation, and then he wrote some other books, including The Revolution Will Not Be Microwaved, which I absolutely love that book. And then another, kind of more recent and more sophisticated Art of Fermentation book, which is also really great. Hi, Rita. Thank you so much for being here. And what I want to cite, I want to quote Sandor, because he has a beautiful motto, which is eat something wild every day. And I just absolutely love that. So I hope you will. And I hope that, hi Tammy, it's so nice to have you here. I hope that when you eat something wild, that you will acknowledge how amazing and special some of these foods are that we think of as weeds, and how how our culture that has really glorified the use of weed killers has made it harder and harder for these weeds to kind of proliferate naturally in their normal habitat. So I hope that you will let these weeds proliferate in your garden, and enjoy finding them along the trails where you hike or where you walk your dogs, or places where you go camping, and that you will get excited and that you will enjoy these beautiful and amazingly healthy wild foods. Thank you so much, Tammy. So the next part of my talk today is really just about a couple of other kind of underestimated foods that I definitely consider to be quite super because of some of their qualities. So the first one I wanted to talk about was cabbage. Cabbage is so unglorious in so many ways. It's cheap. It's unassuming. It's not particularly fancy, but I really find that cabbage is a very underestimated health food. So let's talk about the virtues of cabbage. When you have mastitis, if you are a breastfeeding mom, or there are also non-breastfeeding women who have mastitis for for whatever reason, it can happen. Hi Thomas, it's so nice to have you here. About 90% of mastitis cases are in lactating women, but mastitis can also occur in non-lactating women for various reasons. One of the best immediate home remedies for mastitis, and you may also need to do other things, but this is incredibly effective, is to take a couple of raw room temperature, or if you can, cold cabbage leaves and apply them as a topical compress directly to the affected breast tissue. So this can bring about great relief in the inflammation and the engorgement, and can help reduce issues related to the inflammation of the breast. Cabbage is is rich in compounds that also help remove inflammation from the gastrointestinal tract, and so concentrated cabbage juice, or even sauerkraut juice, can be used to reduce GI inflammation. And I was just recently reading a really great research article on eczema that talked about a specific strain of Lactobacillus sakei that has been isolated from kimchi, so typically prepared from Napa cabbage, which has amazing properties in terms of immune regulation that can help reduce the lesions associated with eczema and the immune response that can start eczema in the first place. That is really amazing. I'm not sure if regular sauerkraut also contains that same strain or not, but you can also buy the L. sakei strain. It has been used in addition to being used in eczema. It can also be used therapeutically in people who are struggling, in particular, with sinus issues associated with mold exposure and mold illness. It can be used intranasally. So cabbage, pretty amazing. It can help. It has compounds that can help the body get started with the production of glutathione, so it can support antioxidant activity. And it is a brassica, so it can help regulate and rebalance estrogens in the body. So that's a lot. I have barely scratched the surface of the things that cabbage can do. The next food that I wanted to talk about is okra. Okra is very supportive to the gastrointestinal tract, and it can help rebuild the mucosa so the lining in the gastrointestinal tract, particularly if it has been kind of eroded in some way. In addition, okra has been studied for its properties in helping the body produce glutathione. So there has been some really good research done recently. Keep an eye out, if you have an Instagram account, keep an eye out on Instagram, and also try to post on Facebook, because I'm going to be doing some targeted kind of bios on specific everyday, unassuming, like ordinary looking weeds or, very unassuming vegetables that you can easily grow in your garden or just get for a very affordable price at the farmer's market. So keep an eye out on those, and you'll see references to research papers that you may want to dig into if that's your thing. Tammy, you asked, you make your own cabbage juice. To make your own cabbage juice, would you cook it at a low temperature for how long? I actually wouldn't necessarily make cabbage juice from cooked cabbage. I would actually probably cook a raw cabbage, and juice a raw cabbage, or consume the juice from homemade sauerkraut. But I suppose you could kind of you could blanch a cabbage and then juice it. Presumably, I've never tried doing that. I'm a fan of consuming foods in the brassica family in some combination, and this could vary by person, of raw, cooked, and fermented. So, obviously, if you have a histamine intolerance, you may go through periods where you cannot consume fermented foods at all, and that's okay. That's fine. No pressure. It's not really your thing, or you may kind of have to go on and off or up and down depending on your tolerance threshold, and that's okay. If you are also able to consume some raw brassicas, like yesterday, I made a shaved Brussels sprouts and grated carrot salad for lunch. My husband and I had that for the first part of our lunch, and when my son came home from school, he was like, "Wait, I wanted some of that too." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll make you some tomorrow." But he was seriously upset that I didn't leave him any. So this is stuff that kids can actually get really excited about. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation about finding the super in everyday foods. And the other thing that I just wanted to say is, of course, before you go out and overdose on okra or dandelion greens, do know that there, if you have specific conditions, that they may not all of these foods are necessarily indicated for everyone. So some of these foods, including okra, to some extent dandelion greens and purslane, are kind of high in oxalate. So if you have a history of kidney stones or, vaginal vulvar pain, vulvovaginal pain or vulvodynia, or fibromyalgia, you may have an oxalate sensitivity. Some kids with on the autism spectrum also have oxalate sensitivity. So do not go out and just like make loads and loads of these foods necessarily without understanding, whether you may have a lower threshold of tolerance than a person who wouldn't have some contraindications. So if you have any questions whatsoever about whether certain foods are right for you or how much you should eat, then definitely we should talk. I offer a free 30-minute consultation to prospective first-time clients, and I would be happy to talk with you about your situation and see if I'm a good match for what it is that you're trying to accomplish nutritionally. So I hope that I got you really excited about how super real, unassuming, humble foods can be, and how sometimes, even though we get kind of caught up in the glamour of things like goji berries or chia seeds, things that come from far away and may cost a lot of money, spirulina. Sometimes the things that you might need the most are right in your backyard. And I will never forget, I was working with a woman who was having some issues with a very sluggish lymphatic system. And we were talking about some of the things that she could do to help her body function better. And I recommended some dry skin brushing. I recommended some castor oil packs. And then I said, there are a couple of herbs that I think would be really good for you. I mentioned cleavers and red clover. And she said, "Oh my goodness, they're growing right in my backyard." And I said, "Well, they're growing for you. That's why they're there. They're just waiting for you to pick them and use them." And it was just sometimes literally what you need in order to heal and rebalance your body will be right in your backyard. So I hope that even if you don't have the same lifelong passion that I've always had for edible wild medicinal herbs and mushrooms that I grew up with, that you will still appreciate some of the concepts that I presented here, and just really look for the amazingness in some of the stuff that can go almost unnoticed or even eradicated, because we think of these things as weeds. So Tammy, thank you so much for your comment. I really hope that that you will be on the lookout for these posts. I have not been as regular in my posting lately as I usually would be. I've had a lot going on. I have a lot of balls in the air, pots on the stove, but I am making an intention of being more regular in my online presence and Facebook posts. So thank you for your excitement. It keeps me motivated. So thank you so much, everyone. And I hope that you will get in touch if you have any comments or questions. And I'm looking forward to being on here again next Friday, same time, same place. Take care. Have a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend. Bye. Bye.